On Canada-China relations, pursuant to the motion adopted on Wednesday, September 23, 2020, the committee is meeting on its study of Canada-China relations. La réunion d'aujourd'hui est en format hybride. La réunion est également...
The meeting is also televised and will be accessible on the House of Commons website.
I'd like to outline a few rules to follow. Members and witnesses may speak in the official language of their choice. Interpretation services are available for this meeting. You have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either floor, English, or French. Before speaking, please wait until I recognize you by name. That is, unless you're a witness and you've just been asked a question by one of the members. If you are participating by video conference, please click on the microphone icon to unmute yourself. Je vous rappelle que toutes les...
I remind you that all interventions by members or witnesses should go through the chair. Please speak slowly and clearly.
Speaking, your mic should be on mute. I'd now like to welcome His Excellency Dominic Barton, Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Canada to the People's Republic of China, as well as Ms. Joya Donnelly, Counselor, Political Affairs, and Mr. Sean Style, I believe. Style? Yes. Executive Director, Greater China Policy and Coordination. Thank you for being here. Ambassador Barton, please proceed with your opening remarks.
Bonsoir. Mr. Chair, honorable members, thank you for the invitation to appear before you tonight. I'm grateful for the opportunity to discuss my Tibet trip. I know that it's an area of great interest for Canadians and is at the forefront in our efforts to promote rights and freedoms in China. I also welcome the invitation from the committee to provide an update on a few developments since my last appearance in February. As Minister Champagne highlighted during his testimony to the committee last month, we need to be smart and coordinated when it comes to our relationship with China, and we need to work with others. Countries all around the world are evolving their approach to China and all recognize the complexity of the relationship. I think Canadians understand that there are times when we need to challenge China. We need to work with partners to hold them to account. At the same time, there are times when we need to cooperate economically and as we face global issues such as climate change. I'm tremendously proud of the work our embassy staff do every day to navigate this complex relationship. Our government has clearly laid out my top priority, and that's the safety and security of Canadians, leading with the release of Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor, as well as clemency for Robert Schellenberg. Equally, the promotion and protection of human rights is an integral part of our work. We continue to raise both the arbitrary detention of Canadians and human rights issues with the Chinese government in public, in private, and in collaboration with like-minded countries. Our mission network in China has a host of programs that seek to empower progressive voices and shine a light on existing difficulties. Just for example, in the last month, we've hosted a two-day event on women empowerment to mark 25 years since the Beijing World Conference on Women. We've also engaged with children of migrant workers and with family members of human rights defenders. We are concerned by the decline in civil and political rights in China. We, along with the international community, have raised our deep concerns publicly, and Canada has taken concrete measures following the imposition of the national security legislation in Hong Kong. We remain deeply concerned by the troubling reports of human rights violations in the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, and the government has repeatedly raised our concerns, including most recently at the UN, alongside 38 other countries. We remain concerned by the continuous restrictions on the freedoms of Tibetans. And this brings me to the focus of this presentation, which is my visit to Tibet. I visited the Tibet Autonomous Region with 9 other diplomats at the invitation of the People's Republic of China. In recent years, as you know, access to Tibet has become increasingly challenging, including for foreign government officials. Despite repeated requests, this was the first time a Canadian diplomat has visited Tibet since 2015. My visit was from October 26th to 30th, and we visited the Tibetan capital of Lhasa, as well as the Shannon prefecture. I see the invitation in itself, coming after 5 years of consistent requests from our part, as positive. We were pleased that the government of China extended this invitation, but I was also very aware that our visit would be controlled and focused on what they wanted us to see. The decision to participate was not taken lightly, and before doing so, I spoke with the representatives of the Tibetan community in Canada, with Canadian academics who specialize in Tibetan studies, and with experts around the world who work on human rights issues to seek their views. All agreed that it was important for me to participate, given that so few have had access to the Tibet Autonomous Region in recent years. We should also remember that few Tibetans have had the opportunity to connect with foreigners. I felt that it was important for Tibetans to see that outsiders still show up and care deeply about their situation, for them to see that Canada cares. For these reasons, and as part of a broader engagement on Tibetan issues, I decided to go. We had a very packed program over 3 days. Most activities would fit under the themes of economic development, environmental protection, education, culture, and religion. What I saw was not the entire picture on any issue, but I nonetheless want to share with the committee what I was able to observe. On the economic development front, I visited an industrial park with close to 140 greenhouses growing cash crops. I saw busy stores and markets selling Tibetan goods. I met a Tibetan businesswoman who ran a hotel with Tibetans in management at the working level. She told me numerous times that the hotel chain, being Tibetan owned, needed more foreign tourists to come. I visited a village where people had been resettled as part of a poverty alleviation program. There, I met a man and his family who were nomads, and he now works in the construction trade. I was also able to see the beautiful Tibetan Buddhist shrine he had meticulously built on the second floor of his house. Chinese officials often talk to you in numbers and statistics. They point to government statistics such as absolute poverty having been completely alleviated in the Tibetan Autonomous Region as of 2019, or the fact that they have close to 100% broadband coverage across the region. Our own assessment is that inequality remains a critical issue. Resettlement and displacement of Tibetans are also a stark reminder that freedom of choice and the ability to live out one's cultural or other values are equally a measure of well-being or prosperity, as is material wealth. Our group made other visits to places including the Lalu wetlands, known as the lungs of Lhasa, and saw a conservation area teeming with wildlife. We visited the Lhasa Experimental Primary School, where I saw mostly Tibetan and some Han students being taught primarily in Mandarin, with some teaching in Tibetan, for example, classes in calligraphy, chess, and opera. This school was impressive, but I recognize that most schools in Tibet are probably not of that caliber. It would be important to see schools in the rural areas where more than 70% of the people live. I also visited the University of Tibetan Medicine and the Academy of Thangka Paintings. We visited cultural and religious sites, including the Potala Palace and Norbalinka. Both were profoundly moving, a reminder of the incredible religious and human accomplishments of the Tibetan people and of the importance of ensuring their rights. At the Samye Monastery, we saw young monks studying. The visit was led by monks, and we were able to speak with some of them. During my entire visit, top of mind were Canada's concerns about the human rights situation affecting Tibetans, including restrictions on freedom of expression, of movement, and of religion or belief, and the protection of linguistic and cultural rights. I was able to raise these issues during official meetings and in side conversations with officials in Tibet. I also raised specific cases of concern with Chinese authorities while there. I sought out opportunities to speak with local Tibetans. Those whom I met expressed great pride in their culture, and it was evident that the Tibetan language and cultural preservation remain very important to them. In speaking with officials, I advocated for unhindered future access to Tibet for UN agencies, academics, researchers, and journalists, as well as return visits by other Canadian representatives. While my visit to Tibet was very short, I hope it opens doors to more contact with Tibetans inside China and demonstrates that Canada is still very much engaged in the promotion of their rights and freedoms. Though my appearance today is to be largely about my visit to Tibet, as I understand it, I want to further address the cases of Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Spaver, something that I know is very important to members of this committee and all Canadians. As I said earlier, this is my top priority. This week, December 10, will mark the second anniversary of their arbitrary arrest and detention. We continue to call on China to immediately release both men. In October, after a hiatus of many months and much effort by the embassy and the minister, we secured on-site virtual consular access to Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Spaver. I've since met with them, both of them, on 2 occasions to confirm their health and well-being. The resilience and strength they have shown has been an inspiration to me, as I know it has been to many Canadians. In closing, this committee plays a vital role to understand the difficult and complex nature of Canada's relationship with China. It also plays a crucial role in the national conversation we are having about Canada's evolving approach to China. The Canadian Parliament, the Canadian government, and the Canadian people have a lot at stake in getting this approach right. With that, I'm happy to take your questions. Merci. Tukjeche. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We'll go to the first round of questions to Mr. Jennis for 6 minutes. Mr. Jennis. Mr. Jennis, I don't hear you.
Hello, how's that?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay, Tashi Dalek, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ambassador. The majority of my questions in this round will focus on Tibet, but I do want to first start with a follow-up from your last appearance. Mr. Barton, at the last time you appeared before this committee, you made a controversial statement about Mr. Hussein Chalil's citizenship status. Could you please confirm today that you do recognize that Mr. Chalil is a Canadian citizen, and could you please update this committee on all of the efforts you have made with respect to his case?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question. Yes, I want to reassert that Mr. Hussein Jan Jalil is a Canadian citizen. After the last testimony, I spoke with his wife just to reinforce to her and the family the importance of his case. And then we raised his case with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to say that we want access to him. We want to understand how he is doing. We have subsequently followed up because, as I've mentioned, the Chinese only recognize his Chinese citizenship, not his Canadian citizenship, and he is Canadian. And as we said, we need to make sure that his family has access and is able to understand what his well-being is.
Thank you for that response. Is securing the release of Mr. Chalil as important to you as securing the release of the 2 Michaels?
Yes, it is. I think we have, as you know, over 120 consular cases where people are in detention. And while the sort of the public focus is on obviously Michael Kovrig and Michael Spaver, and that's where we spend a lot of time, there is a very large consular team here where we look after everyone and make sure that we get access and drive it through. So there's a lot of effort.
Thank you for that response, and I think you know that we're going to continue to follow up on that case. Reuters reported earlier this year that China is pushing growing numbers of Tibetan rural laborers off the land into recently built military-style training centers where they are turned into factory workers, mirroring a program in Western Xinjiang region that rights groups have branded coercive labor. End of quote. I know you've been to Xinjiang before. I wonder if you think similar tactics are being used in Tibet, as we know are being used in Xinjiang.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. Yes, also Adrian Sens has written a very good report, I believe it was in September, that we read before we went there, saying that roughly 500,000 people have been put into those facilities. We were not able to see that because of where we were in Lhasa and Shannan Prefecture, so we were not able to see that. Clearly, there is an effort going on to take people from the land, if you will, with the view of trying to reduce income or improve the poverty alleviation situation, and they're being moved into industrial jobs. But we weren't able to get any sense of that or what that looked like, but we're very much aware of that.
Okay. The Chinese government asserts that all of these relocation operations are voluntary. Human Rights Watch has conducted interviews finding the opposite, essentially. So, you know, I would maybe disagree with your characterization of the intentions behind these policies as being based in economic development. I see that as the veneer, but not the reality and not the intention. Are we seeing birth suppression in Tibet, similar to what we're seeing in Xinjiang? Forced abortion, forced insertion of IUDs, forced sterilization?
Thanks for the question. We spoke to the people that we were able to visit. I mentioned we saw 2 families. We broke the group up into 2 parts. And that question was actually asked. Now, again, we had party officials surrounding us. So I'm just telling you what we heard. And we asked that question about, are there any limits on the number of children you can have or your grandchildren can have and so forth? And they said no. But I think that's we have to look at the statistics to see actually what's happening to the birth rate. And that's why I think we have to get more access. I think that's the critical factor here.
Were you? Thank you. Were you ever able to interact with Tibetans without Chinese government monitoring?
Yes, I was. I was actually quite surprised at that on a number of occasions. One was early in the morning, mainly because I couldn't sleep. To be honest, I had a difficulty adjusting to the altitude. I was up at 5 in the morning and wandered the streets. There was no one behind me. There weren't a lot of people on the street, but I saw people. And then when we were during the lunch periods, we were allowed to move around. So I tried to go into as many bookstores as I could. And I was there basically, by myself. I was a bit surprised. Maybe I'm sure
Okay.
they're cameras looking at me, but
yeah, thank you. I just want to get one more question before my time is up. Did you raise or discuss the whereabouts of the Panchen Lama or the government of China's efforts to control the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama?
yes, I did raise the question about the Panchen Lama that the Dalai Lama had selected, and we raised that and said, where is he? How is he doing? How do we get to see him? Their response is there's one Panchen Lama, and that's not the person, and he's fine, and he doesn't want to speak to people. But we raised that, and it wasn't just raised by me; it was raised by other members in the group.
And the reincarnation question?
Yeah, the reincarnation question. There was a discussion or assertions by that where the government officials talked about the golden urn process and how that historically has been used. So
Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, but we have to interrupt because Mr. Dennis's time is up. And now we'll go to Mr. Prajaskatis for 6 minutes, please.
Ambassador, thank you for being here and for the work that you are doing. I do want to focus on Tibet here, but I would be remiss if I, on behalf of my constituents, many of whom who have contacted me over the past couple of years now about Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. I know you're limited to about what you can say because of privacy law, but can you comment at all to this committee and to Canadians about their general health and well-being?
thank you, Mr. Chair. As you said outright, I'm limited by the Privacy Act in terms of what I can discuss in any detail. What I would say is that they are both very healthy physically and mentally. I have to tell you, I'm deeply inspired by their resilience and their mindset. It's incredible given what they're going through. So I would just say they're, and the other thing, just what I was realized too in talking with the families, these are, they're Canadians who have families that are worried about them, haven't seen them, are worried about their health, their mental health, but they're very, very strong, and it's remarkable.
Extraordinary individuals both, and thank you for that, Ambassador. I wanted to ask now about Tibet. What would you say to those who are of the view that Canada can only do so much? It can exert itself only so much on such issues because it is a middle power, and our reach is limited. While well-intentioned, our reach will always be limited. There is that view in foreign policy circles and other circles. What would your response to that be?
Mr. Chair, my response would be is, while we're a middle power, we're an important and influential power, and I think particularly because of our views of on human rights, our multiculturalism, and also I think our own experience. We have not done such a great job ourselves with the Indigenous people who are here. We speak from some experience of maybe how can we do things differently. I think it's important to have some humility in that, but I think garners respect that we actually know what we're talking about. We're a country that is able to have, a very vibrant, important French community that can have votes about whether they want to separate or not. And I think we represent a lot of very, very good things. And so I think it's important we're there. Yes, we can't force people to do things, but by asking questions, by showing up, by working with other countries, by continuing to keep this on the table, by working with the Tibetan, what I've learned, because I'm not a Tibetan expert, but just the community that we have in Canada, which is very vibrant, very thoughtful. There actually is a lot we can do. So I think that's what, particularly in these times of change, it's important we do stand up for that, and there is a lot we can do.
Thank you, Ambassador. I'm inclined to very much agree with you, but I want to ask, because you raised some really interesting points there. Did you put that forward, that perspective forward? And if so, who did you raise such points with, and how did you do it? What means did you sort of decide to put that message to the whether it was to Chinese authorities or to others?
Well, during the trip, again, there were probably as many Chinese and Tibetan Chinese officials in with us on the trip, and there were a lot of bus rides that we had. So there were a lot of informal conversations about that. And then actually, when we had the meeting with the deputy party secretary, I raised that issue with the deputy party secretary, that we have some experience, we have some views of how I think we can help. So I think it was seen. I think the fact that Canada was asked to come to this, there's a lot of countries that want to do it. I honestly don't know why they asked us. There's a lot of other countries that would like to go. I've got to believe that there's some sense that we want to try and help play some role. So it was informally, formally with the deputy party secretary, but there was lots of that sort of discussion.
Understood, Ambassador. I have 1 minute left with my last question. I wanted to ask you, to what extent have you been engaged with ambassadors from other countries, other like-minded liberal democracies, on this very question, on the question of Tibet?
Actually, quite extensively, Mr. Chair. Before the trip, I met with the group that went ahead of time, which included the Swiss and the Norwegian ambassador, just to get a sense of what they were able to look at, what would they do differently, and so forth. And then I hosted a couple of sessions with ambassadors who weren't able to go, just to share what we learned and what they may want to ask for in the trip that hopefully they get to go on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Jenis. And now, maintenant, on va procéder.
And now we will move along with Mr. Bergeron. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Barton, Your Excellency, for being with us once again. Thank you for the work you are doing for Canada in the People's Republic of China. There's one part of your presentation that really drew my attention, and that was the visit to the hotel. I was very surprised to discover that there was a hotel. Given the restrictions imposed on foreign travelers, I imagine that this hotel is essentially reserved to domestic travelers from the People's Republic of China, particularly Han Chinese who would travel to Tibet.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that observation. I also was surprised by that too, and it wasn't choreographed, if you will. I just discovered it. That, she was helping when we were having dinner. It was actually before a performance that we were going to see called Princess Wencheng, and so she I was very surprised by that. They actually do have a lot of Chinese Han tourists, as you mentioned. Last year they said there were 40 million Han Chinese tourists. What I found interesting, and it's something to someone else to do deeper work on, there are a lot of Chinese Buddhists. That one number I heard, and I please check with experts, not what I'm saying, but just the number I heard was could be 300 million. And so people are coming, I think, not just for the tourism, if you will, but because these sites are actually quite important to them. So a lot of they are Han tourists, and what she was asking for is it would be great to have more foreign tourists be able to come to the session. It was a bit of an oddity to see, someone like myself or others there, and saying like, you more people should visit from Canada. And I said that, no kidding, we would like to, if we could get access, that would be great. You might want to raise that, but I don't know if that answers your question.
Oui, très bien, merci.
Yes, thank you so much, Your Excellency. I'd like to discuss the language issue and cultural issue. According to certain international reports, there have been considerable efforts made by Chinese authorities to limit, if not to have the cultural Tibetan aspects disappear completely. So did you, during your visit, have any opportunity to discuss with Tibetans in Tibetan? Did the Chinese authorities provide interpreters who spoke Tibetan, or were the discussions expected to all occur in Mandarin?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, the whole area of language is a very important focus on the trip. And what we did was we did ask, but again, recognizing when you ask those sort of questions to people with the party officials around, you may not get the most accurate response. But what we did was observe. We saw basically all the signs were bilingual. So on the posters on the roads, on entrance, it was in Tibetan and Mandarin. But you make a very good, important point. Interestingly, all of the sort of the tours, for example, of the Tibetan Medicine Museum, which was led by obviously the Tibetan principal of it, he did it in Mandarin, right? And then it was translated to English. I think it was much like when you had the visit, whatever, in 2018 from the Tibet Authority, that they spoke in, it was Mandarin, not Tibetan. And I think one of the members made an important intervention in Tibetan back on that. But so they were, everything was in Mandarin and then translated, even though they were Tibetans. But as I said, at the school, there were classes that were taught in Tibetan. Very, as I said, it was more the cultural part of it. But we saw lots of that again in the Tibetan chess, the calligraphy. It was. And the signs again in the school were bilingual, but our sense from the group, but it was primarily Mandarin was the core measure. I also, not to go on, talk to some of the family members that were there, of people that we were able to meet, and they said, look, the importance of maintaining our language and culture is critical. We try and do that with the family, right? It's into the family to make sure that we're doing that. The last thing I'd say is that with one of the people we met, I won't go into the details because I don't want to get them in trouble or anything. I want to be careful about that. Had actually moved from Canada back to Tibet because they wanted their son to be able to understand and learn the Tibetan culture. With all respect, as she said, to Canada, which I love, I want this, and it's up to me to drive it. So there was a lot of passion I felt for the people, but clearly Mandarin is the core, language.
D'après ce que j'en comprends.
From what I understand, Mr. Chairman, there are 2 Tibetan regions that are not part of the Tibetan Autonomous Region. Are the travel restrictions as strict for those 2 Tibetan regions that are outside of the Tibetan Autonomous Region? And if it's not the case, is there Your time is up, Mr. Bergeron.
Just give a brief answer. Very, very, like one word if possible, or?
Thank you, Chair.
No, sorry, Mr.
sorry.
Harris. I was asking the ambassador if he'd like to give a
I'm sorry.
one or two word answer if possible. Your
Your voice is very low when you come in after the.
Sorry, thank you, Your Excellency.
Significant population outside. We do have access to those regions.
Thank you very much. Mr. Harris, please go ahead. 6 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Ambassador Barton. I was actually going to give you an opportunity to answer that question in my time, but perhaps we can get back to it after a few questions that I have. First of all, I want to just say that I'm very delighted to hear, and I'm sure all Canadians are delighted to hear that Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig are in good health and have shown great resilience in their significant ordeal. And thank you for passing that information along to us. I will ask you, though, if you can say whether there was any explanation given by the Chinese government as to why they refused to allow even virtual visits. I know I had a discussion with the Canadian ambassador back in April and talked about consular visits, and of course the COVID situation was the explanation. But at that time, other countries were being given a consular visit through virtual means to their citizens, and Canada was being denied, and no real answer was given to me at that time as to why that couldn't be permitted. Was there ever any reason given to you why they would refuse to do that, and did you ask them to explain why they would not provide consular access through virtual means prior to when they did?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. A couple of things I'd say about that. One is we're obviously very frustrated at not being able to get access even virtually, because as far as we know from the science, the virus doesn't go through televisions. So let's figure out how does that work, and we push them on that. Second, I just want to clarify one thing. No one was getting access to these national security cases. It wasn't just a Canada thing. It was everyone was having this problem, and that's why we led a joint démarche actually in May on behalf of other countries who also, including the United States, Britain, and others who couldn't get access. So this was this was related to national security cases that weren't doing it. I think that our understanding of why it was the case is that Chinese are completely paranoid about the virus, to the point of, I asked, because I was able to see a case in May, a death penalty case in May, who again is not a national security case, so I could see the person virtually. I was actually able to interview the prison warden afterwards, and I said, and he asked me for questions. I said, "What are your KPIs?" And he said, 0, 0, 0 cases, and 0 risk of a case. And I said, "What happens if that doesn't happen?" And he said, "I'll be fired." So there was I think craziness in terms of that restriction, but that was sort of what was going on. We tried to demonstrate how in Canada we still allowed people to get access if they had people in detention, but it was very frustrating. I'm glad we eventually got there, and it's actually opened it up for others on the national security case side to be able to do it, and I hope we'll eventually be able to get to the physical interactions, because again, it's a strange thing. We fly to these places or drive to them in the case of Beijing, and I know that the Michael's literally sort of on the other side of the wall, but you've got it's a big TV. It's like this. It's sort of a TV screen in terms of how that works. Does that answer?
Yes, it does. Thank you. I think it provides some perspective on it that I didn't have. Can you speak to us about the follow-up on Mr. Bergeron's question about areas outside of the Tibetan Autonomous Region, which contain Tibetan people, ethnic Tibetans who see themselves very much as Tibetans? Is any recognition given by the Chinese government, officially or otherwise, as to their status as Tibetans as well?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is a significant population of Tibetans outside the Tibetan Autonomous Region. There's 9 autonomous prefectures, they call it, where there are Tibetan people, and that's really in the provinces of Qinghai, Gansu, Sichuan, Yunnan. I think that those are the ones I remember. You know, so these are big provinces. Qinghai, in particular, is a place. You know, and I'd say Sichuan, where there are a lot of Tibetans, and there's again, I want to be careful. There's a recognition of them as they have these prefectures. They recognize there's that group, but a lot of people are outside the Tibetan Autonomous Region. And again, we can get access to that, and we regularly travel to those regions, and we'll continue to do that.
Travel, yes, but my question was whether the Chinese government recognizes them as Tibetans or recognizes them as a part of the Tibetan people.
My understanding is they do recognize them as Tibetans, because they're in these autonomous prefectures, Tibetan autonomous prefectures. So
they regard them as Tibetan prefectures. Yeah. Very good, thank you. We had a visit in this committee from in August from Dr. Labsang. I get his name. I don't want to make his name right. Dr. Labsam Sangye, the president of the Central Tibetan Administration, and he spoke about the efforts of his organization to advance what he called the middle way approach, being a reconciliation policy with China seeking a genuine autonomy for the Tibetan people within the framework of the Chinese constitution, which I believe is the formula.
Mr. Harris, I'm sorry, but we're over your time.
I will have to pursue that in my next round, sir. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Trust Ambassador Barton will keep that preamble to your question in mind for when you pose the question. And now we'll go on to the second round, to Mr. Williamson for 5 minutes. Mr. Williamson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ambassador, for joining us again. Could I start just by getting your thoughts on today's Washington Post story? That I'll just read their news blurb so we all get it. Huawei tested face scanning cameras that could send police a, quote, Uyghur alert, end quote, if it detected a member of the oppressed minority group. This was in an internal report that vanished after the reporters asked about it. What do you make of this story?
Well, I think one of the, Mr. Chair, one of the concerns we do have is the sort of the cameras that are everywhere, right? To look at people and where they are. I, by the way, didn't see any more cameras in Lhasa than I see in Tibet, but they're everywhere. Sorry, Lhasa versus what I see in Beijing, but they're everywhere, and I think that's something that you know, we do want to be concerned about, because it's a way of doing surveillance. That's why I said again, while no one was following me when I walked around, I didn't think that there weren't people watching me, you know, from a camera point of view, and sort of being careful about that. So it's a concern. I'm not familiar with the particular Huawei technology or case on that side, but it's
all right, because this is, I mean, look, it's a police state, so you're going to see as many cameras in Beijing there as you are in Lhasa. I would believe that, but this is an example of using facial recognition technology to classify human beings based on their ethnicity, something that I think would violate certainly human rights and has a racist component to it as well. Is this a company that the government of Canada should want to associate itself with?
On the point of the facial recognition and the sort of ethnic sort of bias or differentiation, I also worry. I fully concur with your concerns. I think as it relates to Huawei, I don't know enough background in terms of what they've done on that, and I'm not involved in my role here in anything to do on the Huawei decision, so I'd rather not comment on that.
Well, could I ask then, the last time you were with us, I believe you said that Canada's 5G network will be made, will have to be made, quote, you said will have to be made, and you said whichever way it goes, there will be consequences. What do you think some of those consequences are for Canada?
I think the decision that the government is going to make on the Huawei 5G is obviously it's a very important decision. Other countries have been affected by that. I look at at least some of the commentary recently in Sweden. It's obviously played a role in Australia as well. So I think that there's consequences on it. On the other part, I would just say is I think a lot of Canadian telco companies have made decisions already in terms of what they're going to do and where it is. But I think clearly it's a sensitive area, and there will be. I honestly don't know because I think there's other than that they'll be upset, they'll be mad about it. But I think again we need to do what we think is right for us and our Canadian interests, and then be prepared to deal with the consequences of whatever way the decision goes.
So has your office, has Canada's embassy in China prepared for the two scenarios, or what steps have you prepared given that a decision should come in the next couple of weeks?
In terms of preparing for different scenarios, we look at a whole range of different things. We also there's a lot of interaction and feedback we get from the MFA whenever a statement is made, by the government on a particular topic, or actually what your committee is doing, which I think is important work. It has repercussions. We get feedback on that. So we're preparing as best we can for a range of different outcomes like that. There's not a lot we can actually do except try and explain that we are following a scientific process.
Let me ask you, I just have one question about, and I appreciate that I've got a short amount of time on Michael Kovrig and Michael Spavor. Could you just tell us, what are they like? You've seen them. Are they a shell of their former self? Are they broken men? Will Canadians be shocked when they eventually see them based on their physical conditions or their mental conditions?
Very briefly, please.
But again, Privacy Act, I'd love to be able to go in more detail, but I can't. What I would just say is they are robust. They are, and that's what I'd find inspiring. You would be very impressed by seeing both of them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williamson. We'll now go to Mr. Virani for 5 minutes. Mr. Virani.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ambassador, for joining us. I represent about 7,000 Tibetan Canadians in my riding of Parkdale High Park. I'm also the chair of the Parliamentary Friends of Tibet and have a background in human rights law. So that's the orientation to which I come to this issue. My Tibetan constituents, and I'm glad you acknowledge them, the Tibetan Canadian community is vibrant in this country and strong, and groups like the Canada Tibet Committee and Sherab Tirchin, I know, have been in contact with you, and I echo your assessment of the community because they've taught me a lot about the injustices that they're perceiving on the ground. I'd also salute you for making the decision to go, notwithstanding the veneer that would have been presented to you and the sort of staged, managed approach that the Chinese would have approached your visit into the TAR. In my meeting with His Holiness the Dalai Lama in 2018, he told me much the same, that notwithstanding what you may be presented with, it's important that the world sees Tibetans in their territory for who they are, and that they know that the world has not forgotten them. So thank you for participating in that, Ambassador Barton. That being said, I am suspicious about what you saw, and I know you went in with your eyes wide open in terms of what you were seeing. So the first thing I want to ask you about is sort of the linguistic point that's been raised by others, including Mr. Bergeron. So you know that there is provisions on the ground and laws on the ground about the education of people. So we know that there's an ethnic autonomy law in China that says schools and other educational organizations recruiting mostly ethnic minority students should, whenever possible, use textbooks in their own languages and use these languages as the media of instruction. That's a quote from the China Regional Ethnic Autonomy Law. Tell us a bit more about what you saw at that school in particular, because I appreciate calligraphy is one thing, but actually having substantive courses being taught in Tibetan is quite the other. So what is the status of linguistic protections from your assessment and your time on the ground?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the member for the work you do with the community and everything that's happening on that front. I think that on the school, again, it was a large school, primary school. It was actually grades 1 to 4, and what we tried to do is see as many classes as we could beyond the ones that they'd asked us to, if you will. So with a group of 10 of us, we were able to do that. And it was just an observation, but we sort of got the sense that the science and the math was being done in Mandarin. Now, maybe there could be, what some people said is, no, there's a Tibetan stream on that. We didn't see that. We saw the Mandarin stream on that. And then there was as you said, the calligraphy, the opera courses that were the more, as I'd say, artistic elements, that they were done in Tibetan. So clearly, and so clearly, Tibetan is taught. People have to be able to speak that language in there. But it felt like us that the sort of the core one was Mandarin.
Yeah,
I think other.
I was taken by what you mentioned about sort of language instruction. You mentioned a woman who's Canadian taking her family back to immerse them more in Tibetan culture. But I know that there are classes in Parkdale where people are being taught languages, and I'm shudder to think whether that would even be possible in places like Lhasa. You know about the case of Tashi Wangchuk, a very celebrated linguistic activist who was charged and subsequently jailed for daring to promote Tibetan language instruction. Is that the kind of case you were able to raise, specifically people like Tashi Wangchuk and other linguistic activists who have been jailed by the Chinese in the Tibetan Autonomous Region?
Right, as I mentioned, the language element was the fundamental area we wanted to look at, and we were concerned and trying to find out more on that. I'm very much aware of the Tashi Wangchuk situation, who has been raised by ministers with the Chinese government on that. I didn't raise his specific case here because he's in Qinghai, so that they don't have authority over him. But his name was mentioned in it, but more because of what he stands for with the language side. The other part I would say, I tried to spend time in bookstores. That's right, to look at what was in there, right? Like, what are you reading? And what I found there, it was in the back of the bookstores were Tibetan books, children's books, and so they're clearly there's that aspect to it. In fact, I asked one of the minders who's Tibetan to say, can you, like, because I can't read Tibetan, right? Which is this? And I picked up one to buy it. She said, don't buy a translation of Aladdin and the whatever book. Buy a real Tibetan book. This is the one you should buy. So there are books there. I don't, you know what I mean? It's not. It's. Yes. I don't. Yeah.
So, Ambassador, just in my brief time, what I would say is that we've heard a lot about the two Michaels, and those are important cases. But I think the case of the Panchen Lama, which is one of the first questions put to you, remains very pressing. When he was seized, he was the youngest political prisoner on the planet, and continuing to assert and actually seek access to him is something that I personally would urge you to do on behalf of the government of Canada going forward. Thank you for your time, Ambassador Burton.
Thank you, Mr. Varani. That ends your time. Et maintenant, Monsieur.
And now, Mr. Bergeron, 2.5 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll end up thinking that Mr. Harris and I are thinking along the same lines today because we're on the same line of questioning. So I'll try and continue his question, and it's in the same sense of what I would like to hear from you, Your Excellency. So Mr. Harris was talking about the middle way, or an approach of compromise and negotiation that has been put forward by the Tibetan administration. From what you've had the opportunity to see and hear, do you believe that there is some space for this middle way, or from what you have understood and from what the Chinese authorities have said to you, that there's no negotiation possible with the Tibetan administration?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the middle way, I think that the point I would make is, the government position of we, recognize that Tibet is part of the People's Republic, Tibet Autonomous Region is part of the People's Republic of China, but we support the meaningful dialogue. I think that's a very good thing to do. And I note the motion that you guys passed on that, which I think is very positive. And I think we should be pushing for that. I think it's a very good thing to do, even if the TAR was able to reinforce what is actually in the Constitution in China, that would be a good thing. So I think it's important to do it. It felt pretty hard line from the authorities when they talked about His Holiness and the group. They used pretty aggressive language, but I think we should urge for that dialogue to be able to find common ground.
So I feel there's some hope coming from your comments, and I would have the tendency to ask you a question about the report that was tabled by this committee in the House of Commons concerning this dialogue. You were talking about repercussions from the actions that were taken. So have you heard anything from Chinese authorities concerning this report tabled by the committee?
I think the Chinese watch and hear what you're saying and where it is, and I think that motion, I support. I think that's a very good thing to do, and again, I think they hear it. Whether they do something or not is a different question, but it's
Thank you.
I'm sure it's been heard.
Thank you. Merci, Monsieur Bergeron. Et maintenant, now Mr. Harris for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And then I'll just follow a little further on that from your responses to Mr. Bergeron. You said it's the pursuit of this notion of a long-standing notion of reconciliation, so-called a reconciliation policy. And there's been fits and starts over the last number of years for various reasons. You say Canada should push it. Is it indeed Canada's policy to do so, or to try to find openings for that? And are you doing anything, or as ambassador, to pursue that? Are there openings for you to do that? Are you pursuing that? Is that something that people should know about?
Thank you for the question. It is something that we raised, the importance of having dialogue, and that's a critical part. Again, we weren't pushing the middle way, but saying it's important to have dialogue. And I think there, as you said, was very good dialogue going up, I think, until about 2010. I think, given the age of His Holiness and where it is, I think there's some urgency to that. We are not obviously in the greatest position to, tell China what to do given our bilateral ties. But to me, it's an area. That said, we should continue to keep and push to try and do it, because that's what we believe in. And again, I don't think we would go on the trip if there wasn't some sense of respect more for what Canada thinks about this and where it is. They obviously recognize that Canada's views on this are important, and they know that we're critical on many elements of what's happening. So I think we should keep pushing.
Thank you. Would you? I know this is not necessarily on your remit here tonight, but we've had a lot of work before our committee over the last number of months on the situation in Hong Kong. How big a feature of is Hong Kong play in your relations as ambassador with the Chinese officials during the last number of months?
Thank you for the question on Hong Kong. It's actually been very much front and center. You heard from Jeff Nankivell, the Consul General, who sort of on the government side plays the key role in there, but we are demarched, or we demarche the government here also all the time. So it's quite intense.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Harris. And now to Mr. Jennis for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Canada's ambassador to the United Nations, Bob Rae, recently said the following: "There's no question that there's aspects of what the Chinese are doing that fits into the definition of genocide in the Genocide Convention." Do you agree with Mr. Rae's assessment?
Thanks for the question on that. I think that what Ambassador Rae said in raising the concerns and issues, I fully agree with. I think he also mentioned the need that, and the part I would focus on, is we need to get independent reports to understand what's happening. We have the reports. They sound very, very concerning. We need to ensure that we have independent people on the ground that can go wherever they want to find out.
Yeah, Ambassador, and there were that parts of his comments. I'm not convinced that it's realistic that is going to happen anytime soon. He made a statement though, and I just want to zero in and be clear on your response, because it sounded like you said you agreed, but I'm not entirely clear. He said, "There's no question that there's aspects of what the Chinese are doing that fit into the definition of genocide in the Genocide Convention." That's a direct quote. So do you agree with that direct quote?
Sorry, I just muted myself. My view is, I think we need to see the reports. I haven't talked to Ambassador Rae about the particular evidence he has on that side. I think the key thing is getting the reports. It's worrying enough, all the satellite imagery and so forth. Yeah. We know where we need to look, so let's go and look at it and get it. So I would be for, let's get the information. Reports are very, very concerning.
Okay. Ambassador, obviously everybody's concerned, but we have two different ambassadors, our ambassador in Beijing and our ambassador in New York. And Mr. Ray is saying there's no question there's aspects that fit into the definition of genocide. And you're saying investigation is continuing. So I guess I'd like to ask on that basis, is Mr. Ray's statement consistent with the government's policy, or is your statement that we need to do more investigation before we can use that terminology consistent with government policy? Who's reflecting the views of the government?
To focus on your question, I would go to what the government and the minister is saying, which is that he is pushing for a report. He's gone to the Human Rights Commissioner, Michelle Bachelet, saying we need to get in there. You need to go and see what's happening. The Bob Ray has put for, been very much involved in the UN vote with 38 other countries to express concern and also get access, focusing on let's get immediate unfettered access. So that's where.
Okay. I mean, look, I just say same with Tibet. I mean, we'd love to get access, but I think there's realities in terms of what's going to be given. Ambassador, I would like to follow up on a couple questions in terms of follow-up disclosure that you had committed to in February. I don't want to belabor any of these points, but you had said at the time you had expressed an openness to disclosing information about the Chinese state-owned companies that you did work for with McKinsey. And also in response to a question from my colleague, Dan Albus, you had expressed a willingness to provide disclosures in terms of meetings that you had with Huawei officials. As far as I know, the committee has not received any of those follow-up points of disclosure. Do you want to just update us on whether you are prepared to provide that follow-up disclosure, either on state-owned companies that you did work for at McKinsey, Chinese state-owned companies, or on Huawei officials who you've met with?
On the disclosure with SOEs, as I mentioned in the last committee hearing, I'm comfortable with that. I think what has to happen is working through the McKinsey legal counsel to make sure that they work through it. We connected the committee with that individual, and there was a process that's underway, and so that's where it needs to be done. But on my part, I'm comfortable. I think that has to be worked through with McKinsey, and that, as far as I know, that was put forward, and I don't know where we are on that, but the committee can follow up with them on it.
Okay. So sounds like we'll maybe need to follow up with the chair then, because I think we're all looking for that information. And finally, just in the time I have left, Ambassador, a lot of discussion recently has been out there about the guilty plea from Purdue Pharmaceuticals and the role that McKinsey played advising Purdue at the time when you were leading McKinsey. It stands to reason that this controversy could have an impact on your role as ambassador. I just wonder if you have any comments at all on the current controversies around Purdue Pharmaceuticals as it relates to McKinsey during the time when you were leading McKinsey.
I would suggest strongly that you look at the statement on the McKinsey website, which is quite detailed and clear about how they feel what's happened. That's what I would strongly recommend.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Jenis. And now we'll go to Ms. Yip for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you for coming so early in the morning for you. And I'm happy to bring the discussion back to Tibet. In August, Dr. Lobsang Sangwe Sekoyong, pardon me for mispronouncing his name, suggested that the security laws in Tibet not only undermine democratic values and freedom of speech, but also contribute to the environmental destruction of the Tibetan plateau and the economic marginalization of the Tibetan people. He further noted that the Chinese government should be held accountable. What are the principal concerns related to the environmental destruction in Tibet?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. As I mentioned, the environmental theme was an important one on it. What we focused on was this Lalu wetlands area, which was in Lhasa. Obviously, the Tibet Autonomous Region is a huge area. The areas that we would have for concern is the mining. There's lithium mining that's being done. We've heard reports of poisoning in the waters. We didn't get to see any of the mining activity. There are some hydro dams that have been built or being seen to be built that also can have an effect on the environment. And I think, as the China themselves call it, this is the third pole or the water tower provides the water for 1.4 billion people. Understanding the ecology and the environmental impact on the broader plain would be good. When we asked that question, what the official said was, we have, I think it's 34% of the land area is now in sort of natural reserves. They have 47 natural reserves that are out there. But I think the point is we didn't get to see that, right? And so I think, again, we need to get access. We need to have experts have the access to be able to go and look at what's happening. It clearly, China's saying it's a priority, but it would be good to be able to see it. And therefore access, I think, is critical.
In your opening statement, you mentioned a decline in civil rights in China. Can you explain this dynamic that we're seeing in China, where with growing prosperity, there is also a decline in civil rights?
Yes, there's no question again that the material prosperity has grown significantly and continues to grow on pretty well all measures. I think the point I was trying to make is on the civil liberty side, it feels very different from when the time I was here in the first part of the century, 2003 to 2009, and I think it's even changed over the last 5 years. It's just people are more careful what they talk about. It's risky to have a dissenting view. It's a feeling, is what I guess I want to say. I can't describe a hard thing to say X, Y, or Z's happened. There's many newspaper media channels and so forth, social media, but I think people just feel more reluctant to have open conversations about any issues that they're concerned about. And in any society, there's going to be issues, no matter, even if it's performing well from a material point of view. So I don't know if I'm getting at your question, but that's it feels tighter, more constrained.
Well, I'm sure with the increase of the number of cameras all around, that's probably contributing to that feeling. Also in that time frame, did you notice more control of the press, less openness?
I think the press has not changed a lot in terms of, there's always the headlines, lots of talking about what China's doing well. I would say one thing I have noticed, there's always usually a report on the president, that wasn't as much as I saw when I was here before. Every day there's, President Xi has done X, Y, or Z type of thing. That's one difference. I would say it's more and I think WeChat, people want to be careful what you say, because you don't know if it's being monitored. That said, then I think it's more, it has to be done in very small groups, people that you trust. There, people will talk about it or send articles. You can get VPN access. I can get to Google. It has to change all the time. It's not reliable. But people, it's not as though people are here in the dark in terms of what's going on in the rest of the world. They can sort of see that, but it just is more constrained.
Thank you very much, Ms. Yip. Now we're on to subsequent round to Mr. Chong for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambassador, for appearing in front of our committee. You were in Lhasa, you mentioned, which is on the Lhasa River, which feeds into the Yarlung Zangbo River. And as you know, I assume you know that recently China has proposed a series of mega dams on that river, which feeds into India. And these dams are significant in their proposition. They would be 3 times the size of the Three Gorges Dam. So the first question I have is, you were just about 50 kilometers north of that river in Lhasa. Did you ask officials any questions about those proposed mega projects?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question. We also were aware of the reports of this dam and also the significant impact, not just on the environment, but what it also may have downstream, particularly for India, because I think it's the source of the Bumiputra River. as that goes through. So we asked the question. We and the view was we take the environment very carefully. We treat it. We're very concerned about that. We have to be concerned about our own water systems in China from this. You can't differentiate. So that was their response. We didn't get to see. Again, we were too far away to be able to see it. So we asked the question, and we asked about. The other thing we were saying is, why do you have so many hydro dams here when there isn't exactly a big industrial state? Like, where does the power go? Like, why are you building these things? How is that? Why aren't you using solar or other devices? But that, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but that's the extent of it.
So questions were asked. The other were questions asked about the recent clashes between Indian and Chinese forces in the Himalayas that we saw about 6 months ago, and the rising tension on the between India and China in that region.
Those questions were asked when we were on the bus, just sort of saying what, because in the previous visit of ambassadors, what I heard was there was actually a military convoy that went through. Again, I didn't see it. It was just reported to me. We didn't see that. We had our eyes wide open for it. But the infrastructure in Tibet is pretty phenomenal, like the highways, the railroads, and so forth. We asked about that. The response was, we're here to talk about Tibet, not the border dispute.
Have you had any discussions with the Indian ambassador to China about these issues, particularly what you saw in Tibet?
Yes, the Indian ambassador is a very good friend here, very, very knowledgeable, obviously, about the region, but also China. So we not only talked about the conflicts, and we had actually a broader group about why did this occur? Was this a strategy, or was it just a sort of a conflict that kind of blew out, if you will, to try and get a sense of that? What was the meaning behind this? Because it's such a significant event. And he obviously knows a lot about Tibet and the Tibetan people from his end, if you will. He was one of the people that said, please go. I don't think, I'll be going very soon.
Has the Indian ambassador raised any concerns with you recently about Canada-India relations in respect of China?
The last time I saw him was 2 weeks ago. So maybe when I see him again, he'll raise some issues, but he's not.
Okay, thank you. Just quickly, Ambassador, one last question. If you could elaborate on on the interactions you had with Tibetans away from Chinese officials. You mentioned the bookstore visit. Maybe if there were other interactions free of Chinese oversight, please elaborate.
Sure. What I tried to do, because unfortunately I don't speak Tibetan, so what I tried to do is I was wearing a kind of a Canada Goose jacket, so it was pretty. I looked pretty geeky. I think people said. And so what happened is actually some people came up to me when I was in the markets. Where are you from? Why are you here? They had no idea I was an ambassador. They didn't frankly care about that. It's like, why are you here? And then I was able to, and they obviously spoke English because they felt comfortable enough to come in. But that happened. That happened in the marketplaces. That also happened in the greenhouse. I mentioned visiting these greenhouses. I'm getting the time clock. And I spoke with some of the workers there about their day. Tell me about your day when you wake up. Give me a diary analysis, that type of thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Excellency. Perhaps Mr. Virani, who now has the 5 minutes, will ask you to follow up or not. Mr. Virani, 5 minutes, please.
Well, I'll say name min la Dominikian. So that means my name is Dominic. So there's a sentence for you in Tibetan, Ambassador. But if I want to actually ask you three things somewhat quickly, since I only have 5 minutes. But in keeping where Mr. Chong just left off, you mentioned you were at the Potala Palace and Norbulingga. These are very, very significant places, right? The regular palace and the summer palace of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Can you talk to us about? And you also mentioned the Samye Monastery. Can you tell us about what you observe from the people there and overt devotion, Tibetan Buddhist practices? Like, what was happening on the ground? Were people professing this freedom of religion that is ostensibly in the Chinese constitution or not? Like, what did it seem like to you?
Well, this is again at just my observation for the honorable member to sort of then interpret, right? Because you probably have much deeper experience. What I saw in the Potala Palace and Norbalinka was while we were there were pilgrims that were in the facilities, right? And you saw very old people, like really old people, and very, very young children. And they were while we were there, they were touring around. One of the questions we've been asked by the Tibetan experts in Canada was, are they able to make donations, or is this, coming from the party type of thing? We saw donations where there was money everywhere. People were making donations in all sorts of different places. So it looked sort of normal. It was crowded, very, very crowded in some of the areas that we walked through. So it felt like that was happening. The second point I would make is that, especially with that person who on the poverty alleviation program, I just want to tell you just an impression. So we're there doing the interview with him on his main floor. It's got pictures of Mao Zedong, red books for all sorts of different awards. We went up to the second floor, which they really didn't want us to, and that's where we saw this Buddhist shrine. And I guess what I'd say is, on the surface, people may think, look, I'm following what the government's doing and where it is, but the religious belief and the commitment, I felt deep. It's deep. It's
Okay.
there. I think, one of the things I worry about, actually, not to go way off piece here, is when the Dalai Lama passes, we need to be prepared for the emotion and the commit, because I felt like it's there.
So
And
let's talk a bit about that, because let's talk about sort of His Holiness in the middle way approach, and how do we actually promote? You saw the motion here. You voiced your support for that motion, for restarting that dialogue. How do we get that across the finish line so that it isn't this intimidating idea, but rather it's something that where Canada plays a constructive role to advance the middle way understanding of it and promote that Sino-Tibetan dialogue, which was once occurring and then just came to a standstill about 7 or 8 years ago. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, first of all, again, I think we should keep pushing for it, for dialogue, and again, looking for this common ground, because a lot of elements in that, I think, are what's already existing in the Chinese constitution about what is in an autonomous region, right? And to do it, I think there's a lot of fear, obviously, on the Chinese side, that there's going to be exposure to all sorts of issues, and we're going to get all sorts of backlash. So there's a trust level of how that has to happen. So I think making sure that it's done, I would argue, privately, not in the public space, having these discussions, that would be a disaster, and I don't think it would happen. But if it was private, it would work. I look at what's happening. I have no comment on how it worked or whatever, what the discussions going on between the Vatican and the government, right, that have gone through various different stages, right? And I think that, I guess, let's keep trying. Let's show that we're going to tell the truth, call things out as we see them, but we're trying to get.
I just have a minute left here, Ambassador. I just want to get one more question in, which is just this point about, we're desperately hoping that this isn't your only visit, that there are future visits, right? And this issue of reciprocal access. So how do we as parliamentarians facilitate that with you? I've always been taken by the fact there are lots of grandiose claims about the development and the progress that's taking place in the TAR and elsewhere. If that's true, ostensibly the Chinese should have nothing to hide. So how do we get to that stage where future visits occur, including potentially maybe future parliamentary delegations visiting either inside the TAR or those ethnically Tibetan areas among those 9 prefectures? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think we have to keep pushing for that. And I think the ambassador visits are actually one start. The first one, obviously, and they were very careful about not publicizing it or instrumentalizing it. They wanted to be careful we weren't doing the same thing. So you build trust. There were actually a group of journalists that went around the end of October. There's 2 very good articles to read about their observations. Again, limited. That's a good start, if you. And so I think what we're encouraging is, let's have more ambassadors go. It shouldn't be selective. Let everyone go, and then be more. You look for this versus that. Go to the rural areas. Go to rural schools.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much, Ambassador.
Thank you, Mr. Varani. Monsieur Bergeron, 2 minutes 30 secondes.
2 minutes 30 secondes, Monsieur le Président?
Only 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Yes, I'm following the order that was adopted by the committee. But we are in the second round of questions. It is the next turn, and then I will restart again. So go ahead. Well, I would like to go back to the questions where you were not really able to provide the whole answer concerning what the Chinese authorities pretend to be able to nominate the various denominational and religions representation. And you said that Beijing had the will to appoint Catholic priests instead of the Vatican, which actually led to some kind of negotiation between the Vatican and the authorities of the People's Republic of China, because we have actually this precedent where negotiations seemed to have been positive between the Vatican and the authorities of the People's Republic of China. Do you see any kind of hope there so that we'll be able to find a solution for the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama?
Mr. Chair, again, I was using the example just as an example that there are other dialogues that actually occur. So I think that should be something that could give us some hope that we could have more dialogues that way. And I think it's critical that people be able to do it. One thing I'm very proud of, by the way, here, and I think it was Ambassador Mulroney who put it in place. We have a very big Catholic service that's done here in the embassy every Sunday, and so there's a kind of an encouragement of that. I think the issue is that we just need to make sure that there's, that small steps of trust, if you will, and that's why I think it needs to be done privately and quietly. But I think we should be pushing for it, because as was said before, if it is as good as they say, let more people see it. We're not suggesting that the Tibet Autonomous Authority become a separate country. It fits within the system. Let's figure out how we get the dialogue moving. And so I think small steps can be made to build trust. And then hopefully, like the case with the Vatican, and again, I'm not familiar with the details of those conversations. All I know is that they're happening. And I hope that leads to something that's constructive for both sides. Other bits too.
Merci beaucoup. Merci beaucoup, Mr. Bergeron.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bergeron.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And at the end of this discussion, I want to encourage, on behalf of the Tibetan people, this improvement and attempts to increase that dialogue as much as possible. I know that the Tibetan people are very concerned about that and are looking forward to reconciliation. I want to just touch on one thing while we have you here. I think you're familiar with the agreement, the trade agreement we're trying to call the TPPA, the Trade Protection and Promotion and Protection Agreement. We talked in this committee about Chinese influence in Canada in some ways, but also about the involvement in actions in Canada in buying energy and interest in minerals and other activities. Can you tell us whether or not the TPPA is important to China? Has it ever been raised to you as a concern of theirs that might not be followed? Is it something that you think that they rely on in terms of their relationship with China and their interest in developing in Canada rather?
I think Mr. Chair, the issue about investment in countries is a critical one. The thing I sort of think about and what they look at in particular is the Investment Canada Act. And again, I don't know if I'm getting at the honourable member's core question, but that's the core element. What is the process by which investments will be screened and allowed? And I think there's a concern because of what they're seeing in other parts of the world from their point of view and where it is. I think that the Investment Canada Act and where it is provides a lot of provision for being able to check on the security side and making sure that we're not putting ourselves in a vulnerable position on that front. So that to me, the core of where they're
I appreciate that. That would be a concern of theirs. But my question, more specifically, is: has the TPPA ever been raised by the Chinese officials with you as something that they would insist upon in particular circumstances?
The honourable member, I just better be. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to answer that. I need to follow up with you. Do you mean the CPTP, the sort of the trade agreement?
Yes. The trade agreement, which has been called very one-sided in China's favor, by the way, as you know.
Thank you.
Okay, let me get back to you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Harris. And maintenant, continuer.
And now we'll continue with Mr. Paulus for 5 minutes. Mr.
Paulus. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, Ambassador, I have a...
I'd like to come...
Actuellement, les conditions de détention, vous avez eu contact avec eux. Par contre...
Do you have any information on their conditions? I have a report that was written in Mandarin that was obviously, I have had translated, excuse me. And when the report was written, we know that Michael Spavor was in one area and the other Michael was in a different place. So do you have any more comments on their conditions of detention?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I couldn't hear anything in the first part, but I think you're asking about the conditions of the two Michaels, right? Anything more?
Your Excellency, I'll ask Mr. Paulus. Je vais vous demander.
Mr. Paulus, I've stopped the clock. I will ask you to repeat the question again, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'll start again. On the subject of the two Michaels, I'd like to know if you have any details considering their detention. I received a report written in Mandarin that gives a lot of information on the conditions of detention, and I'm told that Michael Spavor is being detained in Den Haag and Kulbrig in Beijing South. And I'd like to know if you have more information or very little.
Ambassador, you're muted. We can't hear you, Ambassador. Check that again. Thank you. Yes, we can hear you now.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chair. Again, I'm somewhat limited by what I can say due to the Privacy Act and the details. But as you saw in that report, Michael Spavor is in Dandong, which is near the North Korean border, and Michael Kovrig is in Beijing, about 20 kilometers away from 15, 20 kilometers from the embassy. They're different. They're different detention centers. What I would argue, and they're in with different numbers of people. That's all I'm really going to go into say. I just say again that they're both physically well and they're mentally well, which I think is quite inspiring given the conditions that they're in.
Parfait. Merci.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. I asked a question on the 17th of November of Sean Stile from Global Affairs Canada. I wanted to know if there was any protective equipment for COVID-19 that was bought by Canada in China, and whether they had any of this equipment had been made in these labor camps in Xinjiang or elsewhere. So can you confirm that, if it's true, or are you aware of this?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. As you know, Canada has purchased a lot of PPE from China. And we are obviously very committed to the protection of human rights and not having forced labor in there. We've been very clear in the process of the supplier selection that the integrity of the supply chain, in other words, that if there cannot be any forced labor in that, is essential to what happens. Other countries are also dealing with this. We've had many conversations with the British, the Italians, the Germans, and the French about how we can ensure that this is the case. I think that it's very difficult to say with 100% predictability where everything is, but all the standards and the processes being put in place, we made that absolutely clear to the suppliers, and we've been working again with the other countries who are in a very similar situation on that, because that's the last thing we want, and everyone knows how important that is to us.
Merci.
Thank you. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Mr. Champagne, said before the committee that China up to the year 2000 is not the China of 2015. And Ambassador Mulroney said that Canada was not showing leadership on strategic issues with China. So even Mr. Champagne said in his testimony that you have to have your eyes wide open, and you are our eyes in China. So what do you have to do differently compared to what ambassadors who were there in previous years would do? What has changed for you?
Thank you for the question. I think as the minister said, and I tried to say in my part, that the relationship with China is evolving. It's become a tougher, more authoritarian place. That means we have to stand up for more issues on our human rights and our interests. And that also, by the way, includes on the economic side and what we do. That's critical. And so I don't know what it was like before, but what I would just say now is there's a lot of interaction with the MFA. They get mad at us for what we say. We get mad at, there's a lot of interaction that is going on as we push for things. And I think, again, visits to Tibet, visits to Xinjiang to see what's actually going on out there, to the other regions where there's Tibetans, to Inner Mongolia to see what's happening with language. We're out there because we have to. But so we have to be very proactive on all those dimensions, and there's a lot of issues.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Porus.
Go to Mr. Oliphant for 5 minutes. Mr. Oliphant, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Ambassador Barton, thank you for being with us tonight and for your work representing Canada and being our eyes, as Mr. Porus just said. I want to follow up on some of Mr. Genes's earlier questions, and I want to put into record what Ambassador Ray said and some follow-up, and just give you a chance to comment. What Mr. Ray said to the CBC was, and I quote, "There's no question that there's aspects of what the Chinese are doing that fits into the definition of genocide in the Genocide Convention. But that then requires you go through a process of gathering information and of making sure that we've got the evidence that would support that kind of allegation." Following that, Minister Champagne said, when he was asked about comments, "We will stand up and we will speak up whenever we feel it is appropriate. We have done that in respect to Xinjiang. We have done that in respect to Hong Kong more recently. We'll continue to do so." Under his leadership, Canada was among 39 UN members who jointly criticized China for its treatment of the Uyghurs last month. The countries have also demanded China allow independent investigators to visit Xinjiang and see the situation for themselves. I have a simple question. Is there any light between you, Ambassador Ray, and Minister Champagne?
Zero. I mean, I think that's what I thought I was trying to say.
I just wanted to make sure that was clear to everyone. Now, that's out of the way. I want to go to Tibet. You went at a delegation with representatives of 9 countries. You've had discussions with other ambassadors, other heads of mission since then. You had discussions before then. What do you think Canada's role is in leadership with respect to the issues around Tibet? Or what do you think Canada's role is in following other countries, and how do we work together? What is the best situation for Canada to work with Tibet?
Well, as I said, I think Mr. Chair, this engagement with Tibet has to be broad and ongoing. This is one vignette, if you will, a 3-day trip that's there. And I think as Canadians, we should continue to reach out as an embassy to be there. And we're planning our next round of trips to these other regions where there's a lot of Tibetans, and we actually have engagement there. We'll be going back out there in 2 months. So we need to keep doing that. The other part of what we're doing is we are convening, I don't want to exaggerate to make us look like we're but we are convening other missions here, particularly the ones that weren't able to go, who want to go, and saying, look, if you do go and we think you should, please ask for this and that. Like we were able to get the agenda changed in the second trip from the first trip. They didn't see a school, for example. And so we just have to keep working together to push that. And there's a commitment from the group, like-minded countries to do that, so that we work together to try and get more access, not only for other countries here, but more broadly. So that's on the ground. We can do a lot, and we will take leadership, if you will, to try and pull that through. I think the other area is what your committee recommended in your motion, that we are encouraging of this dialogue, right? And again, I think there's probably diplomatic ways of being able to try and get that moving, but I think that's a very important issue, and I think it's got some urgency to it, as I mentioned before. So we should. I mean, many people say, like, why are you even saying anything, given that you guys are in the doghouse? And and I think that doesn't matter. We should be. That doesn't matter. We will always, stand up for what we feel and where we are, no matter what the case is.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you. Is being in the doghouse limiting us in any way for standing up and speaking out about human rights, civil rights, political rights?
It's not. I can tell you, it's not very pleasant, because what I've learned in this role is you play the shock absorber. If people get mad, but that's okay. That's what we do. We cannot be held back on that side, and they know that we're going to be consistent on Xinjiang, on Hong Kong, on Tibet, on global issues too. We have a voice. We're a G7 country. We're an important country that needs to be listened to, no matter what it is, and we'll keep talking.
Thank you, Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Mr. Oliphant. Now we'll start over here with the 6-minute round. Mr. Jennis, you have 6 minutes, please.
Mr. Chair, just a point of order before I start my round of questioning. I had received a note from the clerk suggesting that you'd agreed to 15 minutes after the ambassador's testimony to consider our motion, and I certainly don't want to interrupt the questions to the ambassador, but I do just want to get the assurance that we will have that time at the end to move the motion.
I don't think I have the authority to do that on behalf of the committee. I'm certainly happy to have the discussion. I'm available for that time. It's up to the committee, obviously, whether it goes on for that length of time.
Okay, well, colleagues, if I could just get a quick signal check from everybody else, because it's important for us to move this motion, but I don't want to disrupt people's final half hour with the ambassador. It should take not more than 10 minutes, but is there consensus to allow me to do that?
Well, at any rate,
Chair,
Mr. Frederick.
Otherwise, I'll move the motion now, which I'm entitled to do. I want to work in a collaborative way. I've given notice of this motion, and we need to move the motion. But I would rather do that at the end of the ambassador's testimony if there's agreement to do that.
Mr. Frederick, the same point of order.
I was just looking for clarification and to hear what other colleagues thought on that.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Mr. Harris, please.
As long as it's limited to 10 minutes or so.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Mr. Oliphant?
I was going to say the same, but I was still not clear whether it was 10 minutes before 8:30 or 10 minutes after 8:30. I'm prepared to go 10 minutes after 8:30, but at that point, I would ask that the chair ask for unanimous consent to continue. But if we have 10 minutes after 8:30, that would be okay.
Yeah, I think I'm very happy to proceed in that fashion.
Good. All right, you're on, Mr. Jennis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues for that. So just to follow up Mr. Oliphant's comment on the issue of Uyghurs, I would observe, at least from my perspective, that the song may be the same, but the tone is quite different between our different ambassadors. But I do appreciate that Mr. Oliphant has wished to clarify that the government has not yet recognized the treatment of Uyghurs constitutes a genocide. Ambassador, do you think that there is any reasonable likelihood that China would agree to admit independent investigators to assess the situation?
Mr. Chair, I think that we should be pushing for that. I don't know if they're going to be allowing it. I think your concern, I understand, honorable member, about that, because we want to be able to have a very independent view of it. But I think they have putting the pressure on to do it. We should continue and get that. These reports are got to be very, very worrying to people. So I actually think we should continue to pile on the pressure to do that. And I think it's going to take others too. The UN has to really push for this again. China says
it's just, I mean, if you look at Tibet and Xinjiang, I mean, we haven't had independent observers assessing the situation in 50 years, right? So yeah, let's keep pushing for that. But former Liberal Minister Professor Irwin Cotler has testified before another committee that Canada has a responsibility to protect, and that responsibility to protect is invoked even when there's credible evidence, short of certainty. When there's credible evidence to suggest genocide, we have a responsibility to protect. So ask for investigators, but our responsibility to protect under the convention is triggered. Do you believe that Canada has a responsibility to protect in international law vis-a-vis Uyghurs?
I think that what Canada needs to do is push again for access to be able to get the evidence, and saying, why are you not allowing us to do this? If you're not concerned about it, or you think that these reports are false, let us in, or let the appropriate
Ambassador, I understand, and you said that, but it was a specific question. I mean, does the government of Canada believe that Canada has a responsibility to protect in international law the Uyghurs?
My view is that if there are human rights issues that concern us, as for example in what's being reported to be happening in Xinjiang with the Uyghurs, we need to be pushing as hard as we possibly can to get the investigation and the independent reporting to be able to see what is happening. We need to get.
Thank you, Ambassador. I think that the question's been asked and responded to, and so let's proceed. Does the government of Canada support the Belt and Road Initiative?
We don't have a view of supporting or not on the Belt and Road Initiative. I think that what we want to make sure is that investments that are being made are following ESG standards when they are made, that there is no pressure put on different countries and so forth. So the governance of how that's done is very important, but we don't.
And is that happening in practice though? Are we seeing, in your view, examples of this pressure?
I think again that it would be good to talk to experts in terms of what those various projects look like in different countries. I don't have that expertise in terms of what's happened in central parts of Asia or in Africa.
So it sounds like what you're saying is that the government of Canada does not have a position on BRI. It doesn't have a position to support. It doesn't have a position to be concerned. It's just basically totally agnostic on the matter. Is that a fair synopsis of what you're stating as the government's position?
Yeah, I think it's looking at it on it's a case by case basis in terms of what's happening. But we're not members of the Belt and Road Initiative. We don't have a port that's been set up that way in those auspices. So
right, Ambassador, we're not members of the BRI, but we are members of the AIIB, and that's hundreds of millions of dollars of Canadian taxes into that. And of course, people like on maybe the government side of the debate like to suggest that there's some distinction, but the AIIB exists to achieve the same strategic objectives as the BRI, correct?
Not correct. I don't believe that. I think that our position with AIIB is very deliberate. I think it's a multilateral organization with multilateral governance. We're one of 12 board members in that. I think that our involvement in that is quite important because we can ensure that the right ESG standards, that there is no suasion is there, and it's a very good governance approach with others.
Yeah, Ambassador, I completely disagree with you on that, but I'd like to get just one more follow-up question in. Again, just briefly on the issue of Purdue, because you referred to McKinsey's statement. McKinsey actually issued an apology relating to its role in OxyContin promotion. You had led McKinsey at the time. Do you agree with that apology? Do you wish to apologize yourself? What are your reflections in response to that apology?
Mr. Chair, what I'd say in that is you should read the statement in full. You're reading a very small part of what that statement was about, and I don't think that's a very fair representation And I would encourage you to speak to the McKinsey leadership in terms of what's happening on that front to get the full picture, but you're just parsing it.
Thank
It
you.
was reported.
Thank you, thank you, Mr. Jennings. Thank you, Your Excellency. We'll now go on to Mr. Prejus for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I promise to stay on the topic at hand entirely here, unlike some who have decided to waver off in different directions, let's put it that way. And I'll also be giving a few minutes to Mr. Zuberi, who's joining us tonight, Mr. Chair. Mr. Barton, I wanted to ask you, and this question is similar to one that was posed by Mr. Virani earlier, but I wanted to ask it in a different light. It's often the case that, and I'm not just talking about Canada in specific terms here, it's often the case that liberal democracies will take an interest in a particular issue at a particular moment. It could be the case that the government of the day has an interest in that issue. It could be the case that an ambassador has a particular interest in that issue, and there could be all sorts of other variables that explain why a matter has become a subject of concern for a country. My question is, how do we maintain an interest in Tibet? What will you do to continue to work on this issue? I don't want it to be the case that, we look 10 years down the road and there's no continued engagement. I wonder what you could say to that. Will you continue to work on this matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for that question. Very much will be continuing to work on it. In fact, I would say that it's due to the work of previous ambassadors and governments that we actually got this visit. Remember, since 2015, we've been asking for it. I've only been here for a year and a few months, so it's due to the hard work of others and pushing for this before that we continue. So that, to me, it's passing the baton, if you will. I happen to be here to be able to do that visit, and we just need to keep pushing that. And I think it's actually been very consistent from what I can see. I read all the reports of what has been done on various different Tibet and the TAR trips, and then in the other provinces where there's Tibetan populations, and it's a very consistent, deliberate approach. So I think we have been doing that. I fully agree with your point. We have to continue to do that, irrespective of any changes that are going on. And I think that will help with China to know that this is a consistent view. This is not depending on the government of the day or the ambassador that happens to be here. It is core. And I definitely feel that. And again, as I said, if you call it, I've benefited from work that's been done before. It was those continual pushes to say we want to go, we want to be there, we need to see it, and we'll continue to broaden and build that.
Thank you very much. In your earlier testimony, when I asked you a question about the sorts of issues that you've been putting forward as an ambassador of a middle power country, you talked, and I was quite intrigued by the response. You said that there's things to put on the table as an ambassador, learning from the experience of Canada, and applying that as part of the way to engage. Which issues do you think are really critical where Canada can exert itself on, but in light of our own experience in this country, so we can be most helpful to those in Tibet?
Well, I think there's a lot of areas, and I won't be able to be as comprehensive as I should be, but some things that stand out again is that we are multicultural. If I think again about Quebec and the role and the importance of French, and it is truly, we are a bilingual country. It's important. That is something that people look at and respect, I think, in a great deal. I think our treatment of the Aboriginal people, I don't think is something that we obviously we're proud of at all. It was done very badly, and and I think we should have some humility. We talk about it, and that's what I'm saying. Even with these moving people from regions, how much choice did they actually have? What are the schools like? We we come from a place of knowing how not that part was not done well, and I think having some humility on that side to say it is actually there. Well, you do not want to do what happened there, and I think that there's quite some force to it. So those are just two of probably many elements.
Thank you, Ambassador. I really don't want to interrupt. You're on a line of thinking that I find extremely interesting, but Mr. Zuberi did ask for some of my time, so I'll give the rest of the time to him.
I want to thank Peter for that. And Ambassador Barton, thank you for being with us and for your very important work around Tibet. And thanks for continuing to engage with the region. We hope to hear more from you into the future around that. I'm going to shift gears for a moment and pick up on where some of my colleagues in this committee have touched upon, which is around the Uyghur people. I'd like to first off, as was alluded to, one of our parliamentary subcommittees established or came to determination that there is an unfolding genocide within the Uyghur Autonomous Region, Xinjiang. And we found that after hearing 2 full days of expert testimony that between 1 and 3 million are being subject to what China says are re-education camps, what we found are concentration camps. You said that there's no daylight between you and Bob Ray, which
Mr.
we
Zuberi?
know. The question, would you?
I'm sorry, Mr. Zuberi.
No worries.
I unfortunately, I appreciate Mr. Regis kindness in giving you some time. Perhaps not quite enough, perhaps, for the question. But,
that's fine.
But thank you for joining us. I'm sorry about that. Et maintenant, on va procéder avec Monsieur.
And now we'll move to Mr. Bergeron for 6 minutes. But perhaps I could allow the ambassador to answer that question, because I intended to ask His Excellency if he had indeed heard anything about that report from the subcommittee recognizing what is happening in Xinjiang as being a genocide. And if he had also heard anything about the petition tabled in the House of Commons on October 6th asking the Canadian government to apply the law on the Magnitsky Act for the people responsible for these persecutions in China.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Again, on the Xinjiang side, again, where I've looked at the reports that you guys are putting forward. I also said we're very concerned with the reports that are coming out from Xinjiang on whether it's forced labor, detention, concentration type camps, and we're calling consistently on China to allow access from independent people to understand what is happening, and that's the message that we're pushing and we're following, and it's sort of under the guidance of the minister. And I think pushing for that through every international organization that we can, and through doing it ourselves in communication with the Chinese officials is essential. So it's about getting the access to be able to open and understand exactly what is happening. That's what we're pushing. On the Magnitsky proposal, and I know that there's been some motions in the Senate and broadly in Parliament on that, I would very much concur with what the minister said, is that we look at a full range of policy options, but the important thing is that we do things in a coordinated manner, that we coordinate with like-minded to be able to have the impact that we need. Because again, from my own personal point of view, voice is important, and standing up for things is critical, but also having influence is another aspect that we have to look for. What are we going to be able to actually change in terms of the behaviors? So that, I don't know if I'm getting at your question.
Oui.
Yes, I thank you for that. The other question, first of all, I'd like to thank you. Several times you've been thanked for being here with us tonight, but there's 12 hours of time difference. So in fact, you are with us very early in the morning, and we greatly appreciate that. I'd like to ask you a very simple question. Your understanding of the National Security Act does it apply to the situation that is unfolding in Hong Kong, or does it apply to the entire People's Republic of China?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. On the national security law, obviously the main concern we have is that it's being applied in Hong Kong without any discussion or formal process within Hong Kong, which contravenes the one country, two systems in the Sino-British Declaration, which was signed in 1984. What particularly, so that it breaks an agreement, and as a country that needs to work in a global rules-based system, we need people to follow their agreements that they sign. But what's particularly concerning is, I think it's Article 55, which allows the security people on the mainland to be able to go into Hong Kong to be able to arrest people or detain people. That's what's particularly concerning. That already on the mainland, that's that in all of the provinces and autonomous regions, there is a national security law, right? That's not different. I think what the concern is that is being applied to Hong Kong, and it's also the way in which it was put in place, which is what we find concerning, and when we've registered, multiple times.
J'apprécie cette.
I appreciate that specification. I think it's quite opportune in terms of Hong Kong. But the reason why I was asking the question was that this could lead to excesses, let's just put it that way, in other parts of China, including in Tibet. So is that something that worries you potentially, or we could see in Xinjiang, for example? And one of the questions we might have asked ourselves is there some different treatment of minority religious groups in China, such as the Uyghurs or the Falun Gong practitioners or the Buddhists? Or can we expect in time that this, an analogous treatment might be given to the Buddhists in Tibet, for example?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a great question. What I would say is that that already is happening. I think that system of where the security can be able to come in to whatever religious group or rights group and whatever, they can do that already in the system. So we're all that's part of how this China feels like it's changing. It's already, that ability to do that is already there. And so to me,
thank you.
What we're concerned about is it shifting to Hong Kong.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup, Monsieur Bergeron. And now Mr. Harris for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. And if I can return, Mr. Barton, to the question that I raised regarding the what I call the trade deal, is actually the Foreign Investment Protection and Promotion Agreement. So I perhaps confused you, but I will talk about, this is the agreement that was signed with China in 2014, and it's been criticized and analyzed by experts to suggest that it was very one-sided in favor of China. Plenty of secrecy about how it operates, and also it's something that can't be changed, or you can't get out of for over 30 years. And my question was whether or not you have encountered any discussions with Chinese officials, or whether it's been brought to your attention that this is a significant protection for the Chinese state-owned enterprises or others seeking to invest in Canada, that imposes, prevents Canada from changing the rules, and gives opportunity for China to sue the Canadian government for any changes that might affect their profitability or investment. That's the agreement I'm talking about. And my question is, has that been brought to your attention by Chinese officials in relation to any matter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, honourable member, for the clarification. That those issues have not been brought to my attention by the Chinese. What the issues that they have brought to us, and they brought it to us in Beijing and also in Ottawa, are around, and Sean Stahl may want to comment on it if he'd like, but what we've seen is it's more the concern about what is the process. It's a bit of a black box, they feel, for them about how decisions get made. We know there's a number of different agencies that are involved in that, but what is the process for that? What's the mood in Canada for investment? So it's more along those lines is where we've been getting the questions, not on any specific act, if you will. It's what's the process and the mood for it that they look to. Is that, I don't know if I'm getting it.
I hear what you're saying. So they obviously would want to understand that, because that's a place at which investments could be prevented, in particular takeovers or mergers or amalgamations could be interfered with. Once the investment is there, though, the protection is found in the Foreign Investment Promotion and Protection Agreement. And as I said, my question was whether that's ever been brought to your attention by them as a protection for them, and you've answered no. So I understand that. Let me raise another question, which I think concerns a lot of Canadians, and we've seen in the case of Robert Schellenberg, the change of his sentence coincident or shortly after the circumstances involving in the same time frame as Mr. Kovrig and Mr. Spavor were arrested. He was sentenced from a term of imprisonment to death. And since then, we also have, of course, Mr. Fenway and two others in August. Two other Canadians were sentenced to death as well. I know that the death penalty is used in China, perhaps more than any other country. What efforts are made by you as ambassador and Canada making to seek to commute the death sentences of all the Canadians that are sentenced to death in China?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We make regular representation to the MFA that we seek clemency. We are against the death penalty everywhere in the world. This is not just focused on China, it's for Canadian citizens, and we feel very strongly about it. We mention the names you've mentioned regularly and specifically. I actually have visited Robert Schellenberg on a number of occasions, and I would just say he, again, through what he's going through is quite remarkable, and how he's handling things and where in it. So I have, I can't meet everyone that is in that system, but I've met two on that side. We again have regular consular access. We are having access, even because they weren't national security cases before, but we raise it regularly and strongly, and we also talk about other missions that are here too, because people are concerned about that. Australia is an example, other countries too that are concerned. So we raise it regularly and quite forcefully.
Thank you for doing that. I just want to ask you, many people in Canada are also oppose the death penalty in principle as a moral and human rights issue. Is there anything that Canadians, whether they're members of parliament or individuals, can do to advance that cause with Chinese officials? I know many years ago, AI and other organizations were promoting the ending of the death penalty. Is that something that you would encourage those who feel strongly about that to write to Chinese officials to express their concerns about the death penalty in not only these cases but others?
Very much so. I think it's very important to be consistent and loud about it, and also say that this again is not just targeted at China. It's what we believe more broadly, and we engage everywhere with it, and that's what we want and we expect.
Thank you, Mr. Harris, and thank you very much, your ambassador. On behalf of all of my colleagues on the committee, we appreciate very much you getting up very early in the morning in Beijing and joining us, and we'll wish you a good morning. Thank you so much. And now the committee will continue with Mr. Jennis. I believe you have a motion you'd like to move.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my colleagues. Thank the ambassador as well. I will read the motion, and I think the motion is fairly self-explanatory in light of the context, so I won't take up the limited time we have for discussion defending the motion. I think the context and the importance of it is self-evident, and it fits into one of our existing upcoming plans. So the motion is that as part of its study on national security, the committee examine the national security implications of the National Research Council's COVID-19 vaccine collaboration with CAN Biologics, and invite the following witnesses to appear during the week of December 14th, 2020, provided that all parties agree to extend the ability of committees to meet in a hybrid format. The Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness, representatives from CAN Biologics, David Vigneault, Director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, and Ian Stewart, President of the National Research Council, and any other witnesses the committee deems necessary, and report its findings to the House.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Genis. Mr. Harris.
I propose an amendment to the motion, Chair, that the words in line 3 after the word appear to delete the words during the week of December 14th, 2020.
Thank you.
And if I may speak to that briefly, I have no objection to the study we are undertaking, a study of national security, and or as part of our ongoing study, that the implications of the collaboration should be part of that, and we're concerned about that. But I don't think we ought to violate the break that's coming up, and it's unheard of. In the non-hybrid world, it's unheard of for once the House rises for the winter break, that committees meet, that people head home to their constituencies, they do work, they prepare for events with their constituents and for the Christmas season or whatever season they celebrate. And I don't think it's that urgent that we do that. So I would suggest that we not do that next week, but that we I have no objection to the motion as such, but that there's no urgency for us to deal with that next week.
Thank you. Any comments on or debate on Mr. Harris's? I see Mr. Prejuscatus. Mr. Harris's amendment, motion to amend, pardon me. Mr. Prejuscatus.
It's not a comment to Mr. Harris's motion. It is more a question to Mr. Genis. Can I put it that way, or?
Well, we should deal
procedure.
with Mr. Harris's amendment first before. So I'm looking for debate on Mr. Harris's amendment, and then we should vote on that. Then we should debate the main motion as amended or not, and then vote on that. So, Mr. Genis, you have something on this?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I'm willing to accept the amendment if it is the price of consensus, and if it facilitates our adoption of the rest of the motion. I mean, I would favor moving forward as quickly as we can on this, but I do understand Mr. Harris's argument. So if that will get us to where we need to go, then we're happy to support it.
Thank you, Mr. Oliphant.
For procedure, I think it's fine to work on the amendment first, which I think is a good idea, and the amendment is helpful. But I just wanted to say, even if I voted for the amendment, doesn't mean I would vote for the amended motion. Because I think that there's still a substantive discussion about where that discussion should take place, where it is best to take place, and whether our committee is the best place or NSICOP is the best place.
Sorry.
So
you're now talking about the. You're not talking about the motion as
the problem is sometimes I just want to get it clear that sometimes the mover of an amendment is disappointed if we vote for his amendment or her amendment, and then we don't vote for the amended motion. So I just want to say that even yes, I think we could support the amendment to move on to the substantive motion, but I just don't want to get his hopes up that means we actually like it.
Thank you. So
I left my mic on so I could laugh.
Let me ask: Is anyone opposed to the motion to amend? Seeing no one opposed to the motion to amend, the amendment is adopted.
Perfect.
And now we'll go on. We can debate, and then vote on, or vote immediately. But we first have an opportunity to debate the motion as amended. Anyone wish to speak to the motion as amended? Mr. Prajus-Katos.
I would just ask Mr. Jenis to explain the rationale here, why this committee is the committee to hear this out.
Mr. Jenis, would you like that? It's up to you whether you wish to respond. No, you don't wish to respond. That's fine. Oh, you do wish to respond. Pardon me. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is the Canada-China Committee. It's an issue of Canada-China relations, and it fits squarely within our national security study, which we've already agreed to. I think we're developing expertise on issues of Canada-China relations, especially in our upcoming study as it relates to security. So I think, I mean, clearly there are a few committees that I suppose could touch on this subject matter in general terms, but this fits very well with what we're studying.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
Yes, Monsieur Bergeron would like to intervene.
Monsieur Bergeron.
Indépendamment du fond, Monsieur le Président, vous ne serez pas surpris de m'entendre vous dire, et je crois que...
Mr. Chair, you will not be surprised to hear me, and Mr. Jenis will not be surprised to hear me say what I'm going to say, because we've said it already several times. I do not appreciate this way of coming at the last moment all the time with motions that are kind of surprise motions that actually kind of interrupt or take the work that we do in the committee in a way as a hostage. It happens here in this committee and the Foreign Affairs Committee as well. And this does not really help us to have some kind of continuity in our action. And therefore, I'm always hoping that, by repeating this message, Mr. Jenis will stop using this process and placing us in front of something, motion that we didn't see coming. And it comes, from your left or, in this case, more from your right side. And it really, I think, disturbs the work of the committee. So I would like to say to Mr. Jenis, for the merits, we're going to start our work very soon on security. So what I would like to suggest is that this element should be raised and tackled when we're going to speak about security. And therefore, I would like to suggest that we should continue our works as we had planned. In other words, to very soon start the study on national security when we will have finished with the report, interim report on Hong Kong, to then start the study on national security and tackle this question. It is an interesting question, and it is important, but since we are going to work, even Mr. Jenis said, we're going very soon speak about national security, well then let's tackle this question in this framework within the study of national security. I just would like to mention to my colleagues, if we are constantly doing this practice that some people come with surprise motion, suddenly, and which take us off our path, well, it's never going to end. So as Mr. Jenis said, we're going to speak about national security very soon. It's an interesting question. Let's tackle it at the time we'll start the study during that segment, that part of our work on national security. That's it. Thank you, Mr.
Is that a motion to table the motion from Mr. Bergeron?
I may have misunderstood. Excuse me, Madam Clerk, is that a motion to table?
I did not hear any specific motion. Maybe Mr. Bergeron would like to specify.
Non, j'ai simplement exprimé.
No, I just expressed my viewpoint. So if Mr. Jenis would like to withdraw his motion, very well then. Otherwise, I just indicated the way I'm going to vote.
Fragis-Katos and Mr. Oliphant. Let's be try to be brief. Mr. Fragis-Katos?
I think Mr. Bergeron makes a very good point. I'll leave it there.
And Mr. Oliphant? You're on mute, Mr. Oliphant.
That is the line of 2021. You're on mute. Following up on Mr. Bergeron, I think that he's made a very good point that this should be incorporated into our national security study. It should be looked at in the full range of what we are doing in terms of national security. So I would now move to adjourn debate.
Adjourn debate. Okay.
The
Madam
clerk can advise on that, but it's a non-debatable motion.
Okay, I guess I was somehow when you said adjourn, I thought you were saying meeting. But Madam Clerk, would you take the vote, please?
Absolutely. So the vote is on the motion to adjourn the debate. I have Monsieur Virani. Oh, you have to unmute.
I vote.
Just a point of order.
We're in a vote. We're now in a vote, John. I'm sorry.
What does the vote mean?
Well, the vote is to adjourn the debate.
And then we go to a vote on the motion?
No, we then adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
It's effectively the same thing, I guess. So please carry on.
Yeah, I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Fred Scaros.
Yes.
Mr. Oliphant.
Yes.
Miss Yip.
Yes.
Mr. Zuberi.
Yes.
Mr. Chong.
Yes.
Mr. Jenis.
No.
Monsieur Paulus.
Yes.
No.
Monsieur Bergeron.
Oui.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeas pour 9, nays contre 2.
So
Chair-
the meeting is carried, Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask one question. Could we delay the deadline of Friday for the witnesses for the foreign influence study till next Friday, the 18th?
Well, anyone object to that? Please raise your hand if you object to that. I don't. Mr. Chong was objecting. Mr. Chong was.
No, that's fine. I just have a quick point before you adjourn.
Okay. You're the last to speak, and then I'll. Adjourn.
Okay. I know this motion, we adjourn debate on the motion, but I hope that we can invite these witnesses, as suggested by Mr. Genuis, during our national security study when we come back at the end of January, early February.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We'll
I see a nod from Mr. Oliphant. So
we'll look forward to more discussion on this. Wish you all a Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, and please be safe. Take care of yourself.
And a happy 2021.
Especially that, John. Yes. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Meeting is adjourned.
Have a nice holiday.